And just as this hat triggers a lot of people until they actually read it, so does the 3.4% CPI trigger a lot of people into thinking, oh, we're going to get a rate cut. We're going to get a rate cut. Not so fast, my friends. Pete and I have the 411 for you on the Rebel's Edge. Bang. Welcome back. He is, of course, Pete Najarian, and he would never wear something as triggering as this hat. But read it, folks. It says, make volatility great again.
Ha-ha! And that's something we both know a lot about, right? I mean, many people want to throw it around, but they don't really understand it, Jon.
Oh, yeah. You know, and it is fairly pathetic how abused it is, Pete. Mm-hmm. But you know, that's just more room for us. You know, they should stay in their lane, as many a player has said about sports writers and coaches that are talking about players. But anyway, hey, folks, we really appreciate you joining us. We have a action-packed show for you today. We're going to dive right into it. So with that said, macro minute, yes, we got the CPI. And yes, it has eased to 3.4%. But folks, that's 3.4% higher than a year ago. That is not going down. It just is going up less fast. So you need to understand that. I think most of you that have a brain cell working can do that. But also, the Fed's target is, Pete, 2%. Yeah. We are 60% above that right now. That's my macro minute.
Yeah, well, and I said it on Monday, I said it on Tuesday. What are we looking for? We're looking for Wednesday, and that's been the macro minute for the last 2 days, and now here we are. And we got that CPI number. The reaction, we've seen that already, a big move to the upside, both for the NASDAQ and the Dow, although the Dow is coming back significantly from those highs, pretty rapidly, I would say. But next up is the Fed. And what will the Fed actually say? I just keep on saying this, Jon. Daggone it, Jay Powell, I'm going to take a nail and nail both of your feet to the ground while you're standing up there so you don't put your foot in your mouth. You don't need to overdo it. Just present it and tell them what exactly the Fed is thinking going forward. I can tell you the Fed tool, Jon, has definitely gone up in September for the possibility of a rate cut by then. But for all those that were calling for 6 rate cuts this year, you might want to find a new job.
Yep. Well, in fact, take a look at this. This is from their site, Pete, from the CME site. We actually, before it came out, folks, it was split right down the middle, 50-50, that we'd get a September cut. Because you can click on the boxes and you can click on July 31st, no chance. It's like 94% that we're going to stay right where we are now. But you go out to September, and yes, it did move up. It's up to 62%. From 50%. So if people want to believe that, I'll say that they need more evidence before the Fed will actually do anything. But Jay Powell will probably say that today, Pete. So my prediction anyway. All right, let's take a look, folks, at Pete's favorite commodity, cocoa. Uh-huh. Sometimes his favorite commodity is the volatility, VIX, which is why I'm wearing this hat. But today, I'm going to tell you, Pete, that this particular commodity, cocoa, is up from like 6,800 in May to 9,900. It's up another 7% today. So that's my fantastic future, Pete.
I like that one, Jon. I talked about that yesterday. And to your point, it's continuing to just rocket after a big pullback. I will add to that, a big pullback. I'm not really sure what caused that, but yes, this big move to the upside. I am hitting volatility today, and I am going to talk about the VIX today because the 1 month range, Jon, the last month, it's been 1185 all the way up to 1445. But that is a tighter and tighter little range that we've seen. As a matter of fact, in June, we're talking 1220 to about 14 for June. Gives you a little bit of an idea that, are we going to move? Sure, we can have some movement out there, but nothing more than basically 1%, and matter of fact, well below 1% on the moves is expected by the S&P. based upon what we're looking at the volatility right now. And we've been talking about how it came down from April. It has stayed down, and that range is getting a little bit tighter almost every single day.
Yeah, it sure is, Pete. So worth paying attention to. Yeah. And as Pete always says, you buy it when you can, not when you have to. Because if you wait until it pops into the 18-20 range, that's going to be a little more expensive. All right, Oracle, Pete, your buddy, Larry Ellison, his shares are up 12%. Wall Street is willing to overlook weaker than expected Q4 in favor of these strong bookings and guidance for the fiscal year. Sometimes that happens. And then you throw on top of that, Pete, that the Google Cloud and Microsoft OpenAI are going to be working through the through the Oracle Cloud. That is pretty strong evidence that Oracle is a player in AI, and they wanted people to know it. And boy, 24 million share turnover, I'd say they know it today, Pete.
Yeah, those volumes are off the charts. It hit new 52-week highs. What else would you want? I mean, Iron Man, as he's known, otherwise Larry Ellison, is absolutely doing things the right way over at Oracle, and we've been watching that play out. You know, it's interesting, John, when you look actually at the earnings and you say, well, you know, you missed there and you missed on revenue. But for those that want to dig a little bit deeper, how did they do from year over year in this quarter? And that's the big number, and it has actually exploded to the upside. So as much as everybody wants to say the numbers were bad, they were bad against expectations that were put out there, but it's still a big move. And you look at revenue, sort of the same thing, John. That's up about 3% year over year as well. So that's been moving to the upside. This whole storyline, though, today really did get everybody towards that whole AI piece. And it's Google, that's great. Microsoft, that's great. Not too bad of partnerships that you've got going with those two, John. So I think that Oracle is positioned pretty well. The amazing thing, it's got a 19 PE. So when you look at some of these other stocks that are out there, they are getting more and more expensive in many cases, but not Oracle. Oracle is still sitting there underneath the 20 forward PE. That says a lot to me. And that earnings growth, I think that's the big deal.
How about this one too, Pete? We had unusual. We always love it, folks, when we can cite the unusual activity that we've had in these stocks. Well, there it is. End of May, 531, just into the close. Oracle posted up with the stock at 117. They were buying the June 120 calls. Well, those calls don't expire until next week. They paid $3.70 for them. Look where they jumped to today with the stock running up as far as it has. Over $19, Pete. If you want some trades like that, folks, well, one of the places you can go is, of course, you can go claim your free book. It's not an option because it's not an option to only trade stocks. You could have made a nice score today, having 1,000 shares of, for instance, Oracle last night and having the stock move like it did today. Yeah, that's going to be a good day. But how about a stock going, or an option going from, let's even call it $4, Pete, to $19 or $20? That's a 5X, at least 5 times your money. So if you would have invested $4,000 to buy 10 of those calls when we cited it at the end of May, which is only 12 days ago, well, you turned that into $20,000 today.
Not bad.
That's how that works, folks. So you should be checking out the book because it's not an option. If you want to make a couple thousand, go ahead, and you have to tie up 100,000 plus. Or if you want 4,000 and turn it into 5X,
I like it.
That's the way you do it. All right, enough patting ourselves on the back, or at least I was breaking my arm patting us on the back. RTO. This is the parent company of Terminex. And the name of the company, RTO, kind of says it all. Rentokil. I mean, I think a company called Rentokil would be pretty obvious that they're some sort of pest control. And they popped big today, at least as big as Oracle, Pete, on the news that Nelson Peltz and his Trian fund management have just taken a big stake in the company. And by the way, yes, yet again, we had unusual activity. We had people buying upside calls. There it was. That was the end of April. So sadly, you had to wait 2 months to make this much money, but you paid 70 cents. And that's where they closed last night, by the way. You can see it right there below that arrow. And they ran to $2.70 today, maybe even higher than that. So I'm just going to say, Pete, if you want to make a 4X return, that is another example. And remember, it's not an option to only trade stocks.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out, John. I think it's really important that people understand that there's differences of leverage. And everybody will say, well, but options are, this dangerous tool. Well, they are not necessarily a dangerous tool at all. You just have to have the knowledge and understanding of how they move, and that you do have a time frame. So it's got to be within the time frame. Both those trades that you've shown so far are in the time frame of when the move actually occurred. So obviously those are big time winners. I think it's impressive. Nelson Peltz has done this before, John. I think he's going to do it again. I think he realizes that this is a company that's going to be very interesting, needs a little bit more liquidity, wants to maybe list it over in the U.S. as opposed to being over U.K. and other places like that. People just all want to be in the United States, right? And that's something that he's pushed before when he's put positions on in some of these stocks. And this is another one. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. Obviously, they made the big buy of Terminex a couple of years ago. And so there is something to this Rentokil and what they actually do to make the profits that they do. They've just got to show that there's more consistency to the profits. I think that they will. And I think underneath the tutelage of Peltz, I think this is a stock that we should all at least take a long, hard look at, because now that Nelson's positioned in there, it might not be such a bad place to look for a while.
I agree. All right. Now, let's take a look, Pete, at a stock where we didn't have unusual activity, Casey's General Store. But we do see a very nice rally after they reported better than expected Q4 results. Always a good thing. Profit growth, 55%, Pete. Now, I've never been in a Casey's, to my knowledge, Pete. I've never been in one. But to have this grow this fast is pretty amazing. It speaks volumes as to the consumer confidence in that store as a brand, as well as the leadership, the company leadership, building this brand up to where it passes $1 billion in EBITDA for the first time.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, John, I've been into Casey's. I can't even count how many times. It's a great one for me. As a matter of fact, Jared might have to throw up the pick that we were talking about earlier, but Casey's General Store, John, it's just one of those franchises that does things right, and they've been doing things right. There I am standing in front of it. Just a couple of years ago, I was coming through Omaha, Nebraska, and I was on my way back, and we were going to have a whole bunch of different things and seminars and so forth that we were going to be hitting, and that was one of the ones that I had bought stock in Casey's Store because I just couldn't resist it anymore, John. I mean, they do everything right. And you talked about the profits. Those profits are incredible. And then you look at the earnings, absolutely off the chart. And you look over at the revenue, again, up 8% year over year. Everything that they did, they seem to be able to execute. I didn't see anything negative in the results at all. And that's why this stock, even though it's hitting 52-week highs, I don't think it's done. I think there's still more room. It's not as cheap as it was, obviously, but it's not as expensive as you might think because those earnings have been growing. And with that, they're able to actually sustain some of those levels. I like this company a lot. I think they do most everything right, and proven by what we'd seen today in the earnings. They have had just about every single category, John, every single metric, almost everyone was going higher. That's a pretty good sign.
Yep, always is. Well, how about this one then, Pete? Zillow. Now, you guys understand, many of you, I am addicted to this app because whenever I'm driving through a new area of Florida or wherever I'd happen to be at that time, I just open up the Zillow app and it tells me what all those houses are going for, including our pal Grant Cardone's house, Pete, which is, I think, 43 mil on Golden Beach. But anyway, Zillow saw positive movement. Homeowners listed properties, buyers' activity slowed. That increases inventory. So on the one hand, Pete, you could say, well, increases inventory, maybe that's more that could be sold. Certainly that is the case. But Is the increasing inventory because people are unrealistic about prices that they're asking and people are unwilling to buy at those prices? Also, probably. So I'd say that this one moved up also on the strength, Pete, of the belief, ill-founded as it may be, that we are close to a rate cutting cycle by the Fed. I don't believe we are. I don't think 62% out in September is exactly like, let's wave the flag and believe that we're going to see a massive cut in September. Maybe, but there's a lot more data between here and September, Pete.
Yep, and we're going to be waiting on that data, and you and I will be focusing on that probably in the macro minute as we continue to get closer and closer to, like, let's call it September. But that is exactly what people are looking at, John, and the inventory levels, as you just said, are absolutely incredible. I think that when you look at Zillow, you have to take a lot of things and kind of put it together and just to make those decisions. Obviously, inventories are up. The sellers that are out there, guys like me, I have my house on there, as a matter of fact. So guys like me, they're going to have to adjust along the way and try to push themselves in the right direction. And hopefully, if we do see anything in terms of cuts, and like I said, John, I see one maybe, and the one would be September. We might, it's a big stretch, get out in December if everything lines up. Maybe we see another one, but I think that would be a max of 2. So I think it's something that'll be pretty interesting, and obviously a huge effect on what happens with these houses, the buying and the selling and everything else. I think that's going to be big, and I think that's why people are pretty excited about Zillow right now.
Yeah, well, it's a nice move to the upside for that stock today, Pete. And, there are a whole bunch of stocks that Pete and I talk about, folks, that will be very reactive to the belief that the Fed cuts rates, and there will be the opposite group that goes to the upside when the Fed says, nope, we're going to sit on our hands for a while longer. But Zillow and Builder, BLDR, are 2 of my favorite picks for when rates actually do go down. This is a one-day move. Let's see if Zillow can sustain. All right, Pete, Red Zone Sports time, baby. What do you got?
All right, we got to hit Aaron Rodgers, John, just because that is the story of the day. And it's funny because it's all because he's not there at camp. And everybody's like, hey, where's Aaron Rodgers? I mean, this is the face of the New York Jets. It's what everybody's so excited about. It's a team that had they had a quarterback, even if it wasn't Aaron Rodgers, but a decent quarterback last year, they probably would have had a pretty decent run, not going to the Super Bowl. They'd have had a better run, though, because they've got a defense. They've got a pretty decent offensive line. They've got some running backs. They've got some receivers. And they just didn't have a good quarterback play last year. We all know that that's true. So Aaron Rodgers has been around for the OTAs, and now all of a sudden the mandatory minicamp, and he's not there, and everybody's like, well, where is he? I wouldn't sweat that at all, John, and I'm curious what you think. I'm sitting here looking at it going, okay, it's a storyline. It's kind of odd that he's not there because, you want the presence of Aaron Rodgers there. But he is a guy in demand, and he, this is the offseason. Now, he should probably, in my opinion, make the time to be there, but I'm not sweating the fact that he's not there. I don't think that's a big factor at all. He's been with the guys at OTAs. He's been around all the team for now the last, 6 months or so, and the rehabbing and everything that he's been doing. I don't think I'm too worried about it. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not worried about it either, Pete. And obviously the head coach would like him there. Yeah. It only makes sense that he would like him there. It is mandatory, but Robert Saleh, he said this is important that players are part of this. But as you said, he was already part of the OTAs. Yeah. It's not like they haven't seen him. I've seen him throwing the ball at those OTAs and so forth, Pete. It's been on all the news. So the fact that he's not there at this one, I haven't heard the excuse as to why, but whether it's treatments somewhere, Pete, which it could be, because quite frankly, when I saw him in those OTAs, he did look like he had a little hiccup in his giddy up, if you will. It did look like he was limping a little bit, and that could be just mental, because when you have an injury like the kind he had, an Achilles tear like that, that's a tough one to come back from, just like a posterior cruciate, an anterior cruciate, or whatever. your body gets used to you kind of babying it a little bit. But I guarantee he's been doing a ton of rehab, Pete. He will be ready to go. And the fact that, here we are in June, better than 2 months before the training camps really are in full swing, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's kind of silly, but it's kind of fun. Pat McAfee and those guys were having a lot of fun with this the other day because, as you know, he's on their show all the time. I mean, they are big friends with him. So I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's something that probably it would have been nice had he maybe got given them some sort of a reason why he wasn't going to be there. But you know what? We all know who he is. It's Aaron Rodgers. He's going to do his own thing, John. That's just the way it is. How about Danny Hurley? Let's jump to that one. Now, all we did was hear about this monster. This is the biggest news ever. Woj is out there every single day on ESPN. Oh, yeah. Well, let me tell you something. They are going to give him the entire farm. The Lakers are going to do all this, and they're going to do that. John, they didn't offer him crap. And when I say that, I really mean it. Now, granted, it's significantly different than what he's making at Connecticut, right? I mean, at Connecticut, he's making good money. By the way, the governor of Connecticut actually came out and said, don't worry, folks, we're going to figure out ways to give him more money. and I think that says a lot when the governor's in your back, patting you on the back and letting you know that he's going to take care of you after you've won 2 national titles. You've had an absolutely incredible last 2 years at UConn. And as a career coach, he's just off the charts. And do I think he'd be great at the NBA level? I think he would be. That being said, the Lakers really think that they are something special, John. And what they don't understand is they haven't been special for a long time. They're an interesting team, but they're old and getting older. And it just doesn't make as much sense. And if the splash is going to happen, I think you're going to pay Danny Hurley, I don't know, somewhere maybe within the top 2 coaches in all the NBA because they're the Lakers, right? I mean, they've got all this money. You've got Buss, you've got this, you've got that. And yet the offer they gave him, although it was much better than what he's making at UConn, John, it doesn't even get in the top 6 of the NBA. So I think if you're going to go out there, you're going to do all of this stuff. And Woj is out there saying, oh man, they're going to take the Brinks truck and back it up and he's going to take it all. That wasn't what we saw. So I'm in the thought process of he's doing the smart thing because if he wants to go to the NBA, it's going to be there and he'll get paid. But right now he's going to get paid at UConn and that governor is going to make sure that the money is enough to make him pretty happy.
Well, and Pete, there was a guy, Seth Greenberg, that was basically saying, hey, look, he has built a monster at Connecticut, at UConn. And he's done a great job building that team. He'd like to be with those players through that and recognize more titles there. And his family, here's a guy who obviously has put a value on his family above that of just the cash. Because as you said, could have made 20 million more over a couple years. That's hard to turn down. But if your family's happy and you're like I said, you and I before the show, Pete, it ain't like he's living in Florida and going from a no tax state to a high tax state like California. Instead, he would have been going from a high tax state to a high tax state. So obviously the tax onus didn't play a factor in here. It was his family. And the fact that he's got these players, they are winning. He has proved to be a winner at that school, and he'd like to enjoy the ride. And maybe for the right money, maybe if he was in that top 2 coaches or whatever, Pete, maybe he would have taken it. But we won't know because he's rejected it. He said, no, thanks. And now we'll see, if he wins it again next year in the NCAA, they'll be knocking on his door again. Somebody will be, Pete. And maybe then they will offer him the money that, a coach of his stature would be due.
Yeah. 2 years at 68 wins and 11 losses is not too bad, John. And they fill that arena. The girls do, the guys do. I mean, it's great. It's a basketball school. I mean, they're in every single way. So, you can understand why there's an allure that's kind of pulling and holding him there. And I think when he went out there, John, he was probably thinking, oh man, these guys are going to probably offer me like 20, 25 a year or whatever, some crazy number, because that's what everybody was reporting. So I think that disappointment, if it's not just about money, like you were just talking about, but money does come in to be a factor, but the difference wasn't quite as huge as a lot of people had expected.
Yeah. And I think there's also, Pete, he knows his players and the kind of kids that he recruited to be players at UConn. Yep. And maybe he doesn't like some of the, whatever you want to call it, the theater around LeBron James and some of the players that LeBron has brought in, because we both know it's not Jeannie Buss, it's LeBron bringing in these players. And it hasn't worked out for him. And now if he brings in Bronny on top of that, oh my, do you want to get stuck with that sideshow? So I think Mr. Hurley made the right choice.
Yeah.
Now you guys need to make the right choice. Go get It's Not an Option. It's not an option.com. You can claim your free book just there on your screen by going to itsnotanoption.com. We put a lot of great strategies into that book. It's not just stories about Pete's time in the NFL and the World League and all that. It's a lot of great trading ideas, strategies that have paid dividends hundreds, if not thousands of times over for us and for people that have bought our prior books. Now this book is the culmination of all of those other 3 books that Pete and I have written together. So go to itsnotanoption.com and grab it. And we will be back tomorrow at p.m. Eastern Time. Bang.